Okay, this is the continuations of our chaplain training for the Chico Police Department, CPCA, the Chico Police Associate Chaplains Association, and Peter Hansen here, and I'm training to future chaplains and getting our classes number 10, 11, and 12 on this recording. So I'm going to go to share and get number 10 up, and put that thing in motion and begin. Okay.
Bishop Ashman.
Oh, could I just putting back on the record? And here is our class number 10 notes: alcohol and substance abuse. More happy subjects for us today. And I hope that you'll enjoy this little session. I think it's informative. The statistics on law enforcement officers and chemical dependencies lead us to conclude that there is a problem and that chaplains may from time to time be called upon to help.
We need the PowerPoint. Share screen.
Oh, thank you. I didn't get that shared. Just a moment. Go back to share. That's right, I unshared. There it is. Okay. Thanks for saying that. Good. Okay. I'll go back to the beginning. So here we are. This is our title sheets and next and what I just said. And then what is chemical dependency? Millions of Americans are suffering some kind of chemical dependency. It may be to alcohol, which is number one, narcotics, prescription drugs, etc. Chemical dependency is a major contributing factor of deaths. Chemical dependency is the harmful use of alcohol and/or other drugs. It is the continued use of those chemicals, even when they are causing harm. It is using chemicals to deal with feelings and deal with life itself. I know that the number of people who die by vehicular accidents in Butte County does not come up to the number that die by prescription drug overdose. So we'll worry about traffic law and trouble that people get into in cars, which is bad because it may involve other innocent people. But we go to an awful lot of deaths, the 1144s that are just dead because they overdid their drug. Chemical dependency is not just a concept. It is people with a disease that affects their body, their mind, and their spirit. If not treated, the person may die, go insane, or commit a crime and be locked up. 3 words are used to describe chemical dependencies: primary chemical dependency, progressive dependency, and chronic dependency. When we say primary, it means first. It means we don't look at the dependency as part of another problem, but that it has become a problem all its own. So you might have a drink or something to calm down after a tough day. You don't have an alcohol dependency necessarily, but you might be careful. But when it becomes primary, it becomes the thing that you look for in and of itself. It becomes primary. Progressive is something, the problem is getting worse. And finally, chronic dependency is once we get to this level, it's disease or dependency, we'll always have to deal with it and resist returning to it. When somebody has an addiction, they are always an addict. If they quit it, if they don't go back to it for 20 years, they are still addicted. The mind and body have adjusted and have placed a receptor, if you will, of the use of that substance. Now this is a graph we can pose up here for alcoholic progression. On the left, you see that people who do not drink are on the extreme, say call that a 0 line. Then up around 10, social drinkers, 20, 25, 30, gets up to a place where we might say you're abusing it. You're using it to get drunk, not just relaxed. It's to be abuse. And it calls upon you to do it more and more often. About the midpoint, we see a loss of control. It's an addiction, and you become alcohol dependent. First, we begin to change tolerance. A person who 3 drinks would be drunk in a normal situation back on the left side of the chart. Now it takes 5 or 6 drinks to get to that same level because your body is adjusted and it tolerates more of the alcohol. But leads to number 2, physical change. The body changes, and it doesn't feel good unless it's in that altered state. Finally, it becomes a serious matter that ultimately leads to either 3 outcomes: either recovery, somebody will stop the abuse and go off the drug, the alcohol, and live a dry life after that, a clean life. They may go insane. The people we see on the streets, the street people, the homeless, very often have a combination of substance dependency and mental illness, and they can't decide for themselves what to do. They're in trouble. Or, of course, the last option is death. I remember attending in hospital a young man who was the son of one of my parish members, who was a complete alcohol dependent guy. He had cirrhosis of the liver, and he was literally the color of a pumpkin. He had gone yellow, dark yellow color, and he was told that when they let him out of the hospital, if he ever has 1 drink again, he will die. Well, guess what he did when he got out of the hospital? And I had to bury him. Okay. Alcoholism defined. Dependence on alcohol is a disease or an addiction. Alcoholism is when a drinker has little control over when or how much he or she drinks, thinks about drinking often, keeps drinking despite major and continuing problems associated with the drinking. Often it's hidden, the dependency may be denied, and signs will not be recognized. There are some people who are really good drunks and they get along all day, but you'll find out you've never seen them sober. They're just looking like they're normal. Their willpower, determination, and moral knowledge will have less and less to do with the recovery than other forces that we must imply. So if they can't choose for themselves, then they can't deal with it. Psychological dependency. The psychological dependency refers to the drinker's thoughts and feelings about drinking, escapism, relief. There is a crossover between psychology and physical dependence that happens in the middle of the brain. The limbic center of our brain has a lot to do with automatic responses to things. We store information there on pleasure, on pain and trouble, on various things. And when we enjoyed a thing too much, that physical pleasure center in your brain will dump dopamine into your brain to say, this is a good thing, go after it again, seek it again, because I like it. And that talks louder than our frontal cortex, which is saying, this is going to get you into trouble. And you're about to have to drive a long distance. You don't need to be on this dope. But the limbic center of the brain is saying, oh, what the heck? 1 or 2 won't hurt you. So physical dependence are changes in the drinker's reaction to the drug, the tolerance. They need to consume more of that substance to obtain the same result, or when the drinker needs alcohol in order just to function, to get up and going. The AMA recognizes alcoholism as a disease that can be arrested but not cured. Their definitions include uncontrollable desire, preoccupation, and loss of control. As long as alcoholics drink, the effects will worsen. If it's not arrested, that is stopped, The disease results in insanity or death. The only real method of arresting the disease is total and permanent abstinence. A dry alcoholic that returns to drink after even many years of sobriety will return to his former level of addiction instantly. You don't get cured of the addiction, you get cured of the immediate physical effects. Yeah, but that set point that was moved is still moved, even after years later. Law enforcement officers and chemical dependency. Law enforcement officers will see more crimes and acts of irresponsibility due to alcohol and drug abuse than anybody else in the world. They're going to see it all the time. So why would any officer then turn to drugs or booze to solve his or her problems? Let's go through a scenario. An officer becomes a narcotics officer. He knows it all backwards and forwards. His priorities are law enforcement, weight training, drinking with the boys, then his family. He builds his life like single men do. He gets injured lifting weights. He goes on non-work related injury status. He's off duty at half pay. While he's in the gym, he meets a girl, gets involved with her. She uses cocaine. He's angry for the time he loses her to her drug. He's already on steroids. He isn't addicted to the steroids. His drug is illegal too. The spiral takes him down and down. Alcohol is a poison in sufficient strength. It can be a contributing factor to depression and suicide. A high tolerance to alcohol may have a drinker consuming and tolerating levels of alcohol that would kill an average person. Blood alcohol levels of 0.53 have been recorded in people who survived that. A 0.08 is the legal limit to drinking and driving. If you're under 0.08, you're not given a DUI. 0.08 or over, and you're considered driving while under the influence. But 0.53 is many times that, and there are people who had been that drunk and still not died from it. But if you or I went to that level right here, we'd be out cold and stop breathing. Alcohol interacts with every receptor, neurotransmitter, cell, enzyme, and gene in the body. Long-term abuse has a huge impact on the body in all of its functions. We can schedule this addiction monitor to have you like it down there. You want it up there, you need it, and you crave it. Behaviors and attitudes may include indefinable fears. I know for sure marijuana promotes a kind of fear of things going on and paranoia. That was everybody's experience in the 60s. Excuse me. Apathy, not caring enough about what things are there. Negativism, withdrawal and isolation. Manipulation in order to get your thing and to get your drug. Disregard for others' feelings. Unreasonable resentments. Inappropriate and excessive mood swings. If we see things like this, we can suspect an addiction. Plus aggression, braggadocio, overreacting to criticism, defensiveness, poor morale, domestic difficulties, legal problems, failure to follow directions, frequent mistakes, and inconsistent work pace. Time mismanagement, missed deadlines, poor judgment, conflicting instructions, lax supervision, failure to follow through, minimal work effort, declining productivity and confusion, and ultimately dishonesty, illusion of control, spiritual bankruptcy, depression, dependency, tunnel vision, self-centeredness, perfectionism, frozen feelings, and ethical deterioration. I'm really selling alcohol to us all, aren't I? This is not all alcohol and use of alcohol is evil. It's the abuse and misuse and overuse of it, of course. but addiction is no picnic. And on top of that, we have people associated with the alcoholics that enable them because they don't know what else to do. They love them, they want them to be well, they want them to stay, and they'll end up allowing certain behaviors or trying to cover it up. Enabling is any action or inaction by other people that helps the alcoholic avoid the consequences of his or her behavior. Most common form of enabling is simply doing nothing, looking away, remaining silent. We cover for others, do another person's work when they're hungover or just gone. We may call in sick for one under the influence and two passed out to call in for themselves. Rationalize or deny it for them, telling yourself it's easier to ignore it than to deal with it. Accepting drunkenness as part of the macho public or police image. Allowing an officer to work drunk can be enabling. And supervisors can become enablers when, out of kindness, they cover or relieve a drunken employee without applying discipline. Intervention. How, where, and by what means to help. When we now this is not necessarily our job directly, but it's possible we may become aware of this and that we need to take a part in it. We'll see. I have not done an intervention on an officer who is drinking. Haven't really become that definitely aware of a drunk officer, but it is historically a problem with policing. But we can realize an officer is in trouble, ask questions, learn patterns of behavior, and work with the officer to get the help that he or she needs. There are employee assistance programs with every department that is private. It protects their job while they're going through treatment. If they want to get well and they don't want to lose their job for the period that they're in trouble and they're getting help, they can apply for an employee assistance program. You work with the department for a program of rehab that doesn't penalize for the truth. We may help the family of the officer that's struggling with the dependence. And we don't ever accuse, we just confront with facts and loving concern. A recent survey of 2,300 police officers by the National Institute of Occupational Safety and Health, OSHA, reveals that 37% of them had serious marital problems, 23% had alcohol problems that were serious, 10% had problems with some sort of drug. Substance addiction can come from various and surprising places. A police officer gets injured a lot because they're out there with a very physical job, and they may get a back injury that takes months to get over and requires them to use painkillers. That can lead to a drug abuse problem because ultimately the painkillers are not doing enough. So should one need to do an intervention, and I will say I haven't been in one exactly. I've helped a family put together an intervention for a family member, but intervention is it's a scientific and very organized thing. You can't just play with it. You got to actually know what you're doing. They make a referral, a family, coworker, supervisor, or friend is involved with the person who's drunk, and they say they want to see a help here. You assess it, need a professional assistance. When you work with this referral or this determination to make an intervention, you need real professionals here because you can't play with it. It's got to be a real intervention. Must determine if an intervention is necessary or possible with some conversations, assessing on questionnaires, work performance, look at it all. And you got to get the cooperation of every element in that person's life, including spouse, kids, job, employer, or others. gather concerned acquaintances, the spouse or other supervisor, co-workers, to support people who will come together and develop an intervention plan. Find out who, when, where, arrangements prior to making the intervention. It is a big project, and it's got to be done carefully and well. But the idea is to trap them into truth with love and concern and say, you're not getting out of this by denial. We're here for you, but we're not here to see you continue killing yourself. Confront the person then in the intervention. Prepare for their hostility, denial, resistance, emotion, and hopefully ultimately surrender, because the easy way out is the good way out. The rest of it is hard, and you'll see a lot of problems. You may lose your job. You may lose your home. You may lose your family. And everything goes down from there. You must determine the willingness for receiving assistance, the readiness for immediate intervention or vacillation, the will to follow through. We must be able to get them to commit to doing the program. We've got a 6-month program. You're going to go to this place in 3 months or 3 weeks later, you'll be released, or whatever it is. If you have gone through the detox, you determine the proper level of treatment, and this may be a medical procedure with an inpatient medical place, the Betty Ford Center or something like that. Get detoxed, an intense outpatient follow-up program, self-help education, and finally provide aftercare with accountability, with some group attendance and counseling, some psychopharmacology, and family support. So this is a very involved thing, but if you want to save a life that is hanging out there ready to go crazy or die, you do this kind of work for somebody. It's a lot of love. From 10 to 15% of our population currently has an addictive personality. That doesn't mean they're addicted, but they have a tendency to go to addictions in order to cope with life. Addiction is a progressive illness. Addiction is in itself a relationship. This is a very important concept. One of the reasons that addictions are hard to beat is because the addiction has become a person in somebody's life. They go visit that place. They have rituals involved with meeting with the drug or the substance. There is a kind of a romance going on there, and it competes with other romances, other relationships, and it must be dealt with understanding you're touching something very important to somebody and that they don't like to have anybody talking about. It's like a private mistress, and nobody wants to go in there. The addictive process alters a person's personality. Addiction is a pathological love and trust relationship with an object or an event. The key, pathological, is the word. It's an addictive relationship with an abnormal relationship. An addictive personality is a combination of traits in response to habit-forming drugs or alcohol or compulsive behaviors. One cannot predict a predisposition to an addiction by looking for an addictive personality. The personality is a receptor or a place willing or possibly accepting of this, and somebody needs to gin up their protection from things if they are in an addictive personality situation. 4 kinds of relationships that are natural and healthy. Our family or friends. Everybody needs a circle of friends and people who they lean on or trust. An intimate knowledge of and of caring for oneself. A spiritual relationship to God, so that you know, even if the Alcohol Anonymous organization allows you to call your God something that's inanimate object or whatever, it ultimately is placing in yourself in the care of somebody higher and better and more equipped than you are, that leads to really God, ultimately. And the community around us wants you to be well. Okay. The addict will forego all of these natural relationships in favor of the addiction. The four natural relationships are not always reliable or predictable. They may be an irritant. Family problems can lead to seeking some sort of relief. The addicts get intensity and intimacy mixed up. The addict falls into a delusion that intensity is intimacy. There's no intimacy with a drunk, but the intensity of the experience might feel like a paramour. Sobriety is defined as to recover from an addiction, a new lifestyle that must be learned. The self has to be renewed. The person has to move from being addict-centered to self-centered. I don't mean self-centered like prideful or self-centered, but you got to value yourself enough to get well. Recovery has these two major goals: sobriety and conversion. There are several theories or models that outline the addiction process, including these most commonly used models. A medical model. According to the medical model, an addiction to alcohol or drugs is considered a disease because it's a process that produces characteristic disturbances in many organ systems in the body. Some current research studies show a possible genetic predisposition to addiction. However, the exact gene has not yet been identified. Research has shown that males with a biological male relative with an alcohol or drug addiction are themselves at a higher risk for developing an addiction. Females, although to the lesser extent than males, also have a higher risk for developing addiction if there's a strong family history of this disorder. Is it nature or nurture? Who is really to say? Chemical substances alter brain chemistry, and in some cases the brain may no longer produce natural substances, thus creating the drug dependency. Another model is social learning. Alcohol and drug use is learned behavior in response to certain stimuli, such as certain people, events, feelings, according to this model. Thus, the addicts tend to use drugs or alcohol to engage in certain activities when around others engaged in drug use or the activity. They also use because of the resulting feeling. Using drugs is a social event. Very often people will want others around themselves who are also doing the drug. That's why guys go to the bars, because everybody's drinking there. And they support each other and put a kind of a positive cast upon the whole thing. The change in mood that's caused by the drug is desired and predictable. Arousal happens as with some drugs and with gambling. For instance, the gambling addiction is very difficult to beat because this sense that you're going to do well if you start in the process. And satiation, as the drug or activity creates a sense of fullness or numbness from pain, some pleasure or pain avoidance. Another model is the biopsychosocial model. This addiction model is a broad, holistic view of the process of addiction. It incorporates elements from all the models, including the medical and social learning models that I've just described. Once the person is in recovery, former addicts must be aware that the addictive personality remains with them, and the struggle between the self and the addict is going to continue. During stressful periods, recovering addicts will want to deal with the world through their addictions. The addict side of their personality is always going to look for an opportunity to reassert itself, to resume control, and weaken the person again. God grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things that I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. A person comes to believe in himself and others and higher principles if they are in spiritual reawakening. Recovery teaches us how to have relationships. Relationships that heal and nurture are based on negotiation, not manipulation. We are limited to our control. We have to deal with others. The 12-step process, if you're familiar with that enough, starts with surrender, or the realization that I am an addict and I can't get myself well by myself. I need help from someone higher and more powerful than me. Leading to hope, leading to faith, leading to honesty, to trust, to willingness, to humility, responsibility, accountability, awareness, patience, and service, which is helping others and staying in the help mode, which feeds the positive self-image at the end of this process. Now, ready for becoming uncomfortable? This is 42 common addictions, and some of them will surprise you to be called addictions. Addiction to crime. Criminals, repeat criminals have a tendency to want to go break the law. There's an addiction for muscle relaxants, soma, or some other kind of drugs. They're just dope, basically. Addiction to laziness or workaholics, to work. Alcohol, of course, is number one in the country. Antidepressants can be an addiction. I'm not saying you can't take those. Some have to take it. Barbiturates, caffeine. Don't talk to me about caffeine. I like it. Cocaine, of course. I'll say I had a little cocaine incident. I had a small piece of grit, a piece of stone, a teeny chip that had gotten flown up and embedded in my eyeball, and it had to be removed at one of these instant doc in the box places. They gave me some eye drops in the one eye, and then when it was fully ready, they were able to pick it out, and I was fine. But I said, where do I get those eye drops, man? That's the best my eyes have felt ever in my life. And they said, you can't buy it. I said, why not? He says, that's cocaine. I said, holy smokes. No wonder people like that stuff. I was amazed at that. Medicinally, it's okay. Codependency can be an addiction. The people who help others who are dependent upon stuff becomes an addiction. Some people will literally have a sequence of relationships where they are codependent. Cough medicines, because of the codeine. Diuretics, everybody drinking too much Coca-Cola. Drugs of other kinds. Food addictions, of course, is a big problem in America, and people are looking like Russians. Gambling addiction, as I mentioned. Hallucinogens like PCP and LSD and so forth. Heroin and other opiates. And of course, we know that there have been a lot of artificial opiates that have been developed because they are such a knockout and makes people feel good because they just go away. And internet addiction. Oh no. Screen time. Literally, we're putting things on our phones and other things to try to limit ourselves from the fascination with our little gadgets. An addiction to isolation or kleptomania. That's an addiction. Marijuana, of course. And marijuana is and it may not be true anymore. I remember it used to be said that it wasn't physically addictive, but it is very psychologically addictive, and that's kind of the same thing. Your body likes it, you go to it. Masturbation can be a very terrible addiction, and some people are ridiculously tied to that. Narcotics, just of other kinds. Nicotine, of course, smoking. Overachievement, people who are addicted to looking great because of all their big deals that they've done. Overeating, that isn't necessarily food. People can get bulimia and eat a lot but don't keep it. Overworking, that's kind of back in the work schedule. Painkillers. People pleasing, people can be addicted to trying to get the response from people's happiness with you. Perfectionism, another surprise. Pornography, not a surprise. It is estimated that well over 50% of men in America have a porn addiction. That's a staggering amount of guys who are stuck in those images and that unreality. Prescription drugs, sadism, terrible subject, sex addictions of other kinds, shopping when the going gets tough, the sleeping, and there can be something like a disorder like narcolepsy, sleeping pills associated with that, smoking for other reasons than just the drug, sniffing solvents, that's a terrible addiction. It leads to brain troubles. Oops. Sniffing solvents, stimulants of other kinds like diet pills, amphetamines, therapy, somebody who just wants 90 different kinds of therapy. Valium is a specific drug that has an addiction to it. And there we are. I am open to questions. If you can unmute yourselves, you can ask me if you have any questions about the subject, the unpleasant subject we've just covered.
I missed the sadism because I got a call and I was trying to get rid of it. So what did I miss on that one?
Well, where did we lose you?
You just mentioned it and then
Which
I
one?
dropped the call on sadism.
Satanism? I didn't mention Satanism.
Oh, I thought you did. Sound like you did.
Well, that would be one to add to the list. That would be something. I don't know if I'd call that an addiction, but perhaps it is. There is there could be a religious spirit kind of a addiction. That would be probably a good categorization, where people are misusing spiritism for an addiction to feeling like they're in charge of something big and mysterious. That's pretty good. I like it. If you see what we have here, these are the beginning of the list.
Okay.
And it should be in your printed materials as well.
It is. I like what you said about the marijuana because so many people think, oh, it's fine, it's legal, but it is habitual and it does alter their personality and even their fine motor skills.
Yeah, I mean, I was in college in the late 60s, early 70s, and I can't say I stayed away from that stuff. I certainly used it for a period of something like 4 years, at the end of which time I found that my motivation was really low. My short-term memory was being done away with. I couldn't remember where I was, what I was about to do.
Wow.
I wasn't getting anything out of the drug. I would use it and go to sleep. And I had to confront myself and say, hey, I want my life back. This isn't getting me anywhere. There's no payoff. There's no payoff. And that was back when, you smoked the seeds and stems. I mean, it was lousy quality dope. Today, it's just the flowers. I mean, they harvest these intense, many times more intense marijuana today than they did back in the 60s and 70s. And I can't imagine getting stoned on what they produce these days and give you in a little bag. But I don't want to.
No.
It's been many, many decades since I was stupid. It was fun at first, but it's not a good thing to follow through with.
Well, I call it the precursor drug because it seems like, once they get into the marijuana, they want more of a high. It just seems to where they start out at.
We used to always call it a gateway drug, and that was the danger of it. But if people said, no, I can control it, I'll only do dope, I'm going, well, I'm sorry, but it isn't a free ride, and it's a progressive disease, and you will lose yourself to it because you don't respond to other people the same way. And it is a relationship. There's a whole romance with marijuana use, and a social circle with it too, where you want to get stoned with other people, and it drags you down. My first bishop always used to call drugs Satan's sacraments.
It
Uh,
is.
it's dancing with the devil
It is.
and using his methods to get into a spiritual place, but not a
Absolutely.
good spiritual place. Okay. Well, that's our drug-related thing, and cops can be subject to this as just other people can also. So,
Oh, I have one more question. Now, if you
yes.
see that you see a suspected problem, would we come to you? Where's our first line of reporting it?
Very good. Well, we will have a police liaison, who is our police chief. It's kind of hard to say. I'm keeping it secret if you take it to the chief. But once you become a chaplain, I would say you would come to either Bud or myself or the vice president and president. Um, and we would take it from there and quietly or say one of our chaplains has located a person who's they're seeing evidence of drug or alcohol abuse possibly, and ask the chief what we should do next. And he might say, well, don't tell me about it. Go to the internal affairs officer, and we have a sergeant who's called the professional standards sergeant. And that's his whole job. He'll take reports of things like this, and then it goes into employee assistance, and is handed off from there. So that would probably be the way we do it. You come to me or Bud Chauvin, and we'll take it to the chief, and therefore we'll carry no tales, but we'll get a direction from him. I'd say that's probably how we do it. That
Okay.
hasn't happened yet to my knowledge in 25 years, but
Oh, wonderful.
yeah, that doesn't mean they don't have problems, but it isn't like we are made aware of it. But it's good to go through the procedure. Now, it's good also to understand drug abuse and alcohol abuse, because we're going to go out into the public, and the public is rife with this, and we need to understand what we're dealing with. You and I might not have a relationship directly with alcoholics right at present, but we're gonna see it in a sort of triage situation where we have a short-term dealing with somebody, and we might suggest to them or to the person with them to say there needs to be an intervention with this person. They are really gone. I mean, I had a death in the house. I think I mentioned this, where a relatively young man, I'd say he was in his 30s, was living with a girlfriend and her friend in this apartment, and he would get so drunk he'd pass out anywhere he was in the house. And he passed out in the hallway, and they just stepped over him for a few hours because they figured he was too big to pick up, so they just sort of tolerated. This is codependency perfectly, right? We'll just pretend this is normal and not do anything about it. They finally figured out he's not getting up, so they tried to rouse him and realized he was dead. So
Ah,
we're called into the situation, and I'm in this apartment where they didn't stop smoking the whole time of the interview.
unbelievable.
It was like a bar after closing time. That can happen, and they were one of the sets of people who asked me if I thought he had a chance going to heaven, and I thought, oh my gosh,
It's a hard one.
not for me to say here, but
Right.
I can pray for him. Would you do that? Would you go out to the ambulance and please pray for him? Okay.
Uh-uh.
So off I went. Of course, I can make a prayer and put it in God's mercy and not try to judge the situation. But it was a hard call. I tell you, I had a
That's
hard time
sad.
thinking this guy made it. He drank himself to death.
So sad. So sad. And he was young, you said.
He was young, yes. just like the young man who had the cirrhosis problem. Okay, why don't we take about a 2-minute break or 5-minute break, come back as soon as you can, and I'm going to be back from the rest. We're back on the recording. Welcome back, Carla. Welcome back, Marianne. And we are going to continue and go on to our next section. This is class 11, and it's called Burnout. As I said, there are a number of teachings that go into our taking care of ourselves psychologically well. We are a volunteer police chaplaincy. We come at call. We have hours or days at which we're subject to being called out, and we go in among them. But there are professional chaplains who are trained also by the ICPC, and they're professional, literally part of a police department, and that's their normal job. I would say those kind of folks are more likely to face burnout because the intensity of policing can be so much on them that they can't handle it after a while. But we just want to give you this little piece, and then the last thing has to do with stress. So we're on a psychological deal here: addiction, burnout, and stress. The good subjects for Christian ministers. Okay. Class 11 is burnout. What is burnout? Some definitions. Burnout is a form of stress that all people suffer at various times. Burnout becomes critical when we're distressed and begin to feel fatigued and frustrated every day with no relief. Normally, people have days when they feel energetic and optimistic, days that are so-so, and days when they are down and frustrated. When your days go from being fatigued and frustrated to despair and anger with no good days in between, then you might be suffering from job-rated burnout. Fatigue is exhaustion from continuous and long-term stress and hard work. Compassion can cause an over-concern for others' welfare, placing their good above your own well-being. Compassion literally means to suffer with, so it's a good thing, compassion. I had my first job right after college, where I'd gotten an architecture degree, but decided to work in a different field for a little while. I was at a work training center for mentally retarded adults, like we have one in Chico here right now, the work training center. The first job I had was not what I was going to normally do, but I was in charge of the activities side of the house. These are adults who were mentally retarded, and they were the more severely retarded and less capable members of the client group. So I was suddenly, with no training at all, with a degree in architecture, in charge of about a dozen or so people who were seriously retarded, and they were doing activities that I had never done myself, like making pottery and painting it with the stuff you use to fire it. And they were constantly coming to me, Peter, help me with this. I don't know what to do. I need help over there. And I was running around because of my compassion's sake. I was overloading myself with concern. And it was a 7-hour shift, at the end of which time I found myself mentally retarded. I had given away so much of my own mind and care and thought and concern because of their situation. I felt compelled to do this, that I was completely irrational. At the end of the time, I could hardly walk. I certainly shouldn't be driving. I was just a mess, and I said, what is wrong with me? And I realized, oh, you're overgiving. You got to create a little bit of valid space around yourself and say, go back and sit down. I'll be over there in a few minutes. And that's possible. So our compassion can't overboard us and wash us out. Depression is a clinical condition of lowered psychological strength, compounded by loss of energy, appetite, the will to go out and do what one is supposed to do. Depression, you can just stay in bed all day. Perception or perspective is our worldview or self-image or self-value, and it affects the value of others. Perception can be harmed greatly by depression or burnout. Okay, these are terms we deal with. Causes of burnout. The police have too much to do and not enough time to do their jobs. Crime and calls for police service are increasing incessantly, but resources and time to do the job are not increasing accordingly. As the city of Chico has grown in population from 45,000 people when I first came here 33 years ago, to now it's over like 120,000. We have not tripled the number of cops that we have in the department. So our effectiveness has dropped somewhat. And really the concentration of police per so many thousands of people in the community is way low in terms of the general populations of other cities. However, we handle it, and it is okay. But when a cop goes out on duty, it's call to call to call to call to call. A poster that can be put up on the police wall is, "We, the dedicated, have done so much with so little for so long. We're not qualified to do the impossible with absolutely nothing." The police have a job that must be done well in seemingly impossible circumstances. Demands on police are accelerating, not just growing. Changes in crime, court decisions, and community expectations occur faster than people can cope with the changes in the political atmosphere of the last half a dozen or so years. We've had an awful lot of discussion in the public forum about police, whether we defund the police, whether the police should respond to this or that kind of crime, whether there's going to be prosecution done to certain kinds of crime or not. There's been an awful lot of that going on. And the cops literally developed the body cam that they wear on their chests now that records what's going on in front of them so they can defend themselves against everybody else who's got a phone camera and recording them while they're interacting with people in the public. It's a real new world. We're all suffering from the stress that Alvin Toffler called future shock in his excellent book way back in the late 60s. Now here's a scene. An officer is on a bridge in the cold rain protecting a scene of an accident caused by a burglar escaping from a building and is being cursed by passing motorists who have to slow down on the freeway. The officer wishes that she had the problems of an office worker who is frustrated because the transformer in a light is buzzing and the coffee just isn't ready yet. The community expects the officer to clear the freeway immediately, to care for injured people, to gather all the evidence necessary to convict the fleeing felon and not inconvenience anybody at the same time, and keep citizens and administrators all happy. It's not possible. I've been at a number of traffic accident sites where I've been asked to quickly step out and handle traffic, to divert traffic, that you can't come this way. And people give you a hard time. I'm going that way. I'm going, no, you're not. You're going to go around that way and figure it out. And it's difficult. But they expect a lot of cops, but they don't give much consideration sometimes. Demands at the home of a cop don't relent either. An officer must meet the needs of his family, spend time with them, yet he works shift work and this weird hours and attends court proceedings outside of his shift and works overtime as well. He has little control over these times and how they affect his family life. He does not receive a large salary to compensate for the time that he can't spend with his family. He is further demoralized because he is seldom recognized or appreciated for his work. He shows up and people start booing. In fact, officers are sometimes criticized by the news media, officials, and citizens after putting themselves in harm's way to aggressively protect and serve. No wonder so many are suffering from job burnout. I will say that in Chico, the general community at large mostly And of course, our own administration and the city council for the greater part is highly supportive of law enforcement. So we don't have a poisonous atmosphere like they do in some cities where the cops are regarded as a gang that everybody hates. You couldn't work in that environment. The causes of burnout mentioned are not the only causes. The police work is not the only profession that suffers burnout. Regardless of that, the fact remains that many police employees are suffering from burnout. Officers need to remember that dedicated civilian employees are just as committed, and they suffer many of the same stresses that they do. So here are the symptoms of burnout. Burnout appears in job performance, health, and emotional stability. Job performance: a lessened productivity, carelessness, absenteeism. Officers make fewer calls and initiate fewer activities. They become careless in their appearance, don't take good care of their equipment or cars. A person might drink more, sleep less, and eat erratically. Alcohol interferes with normal sleep cycles that rejuvenate emotional reserves. Low quality foods from fast food places contribute similarly to alcohol. That's really true. If cops are eating junk food all the time, the old stereotype that cops survive on coffee and donuts is not really true. If you see our cops in a public way, they may eat like a fish taco or something, but you won't see them eat a donut very often because that stereotype has made it so ugly to do that they just don't drink coffee, or if they do, they don't have a donut with it. On the physical side, the body begins to give out under the distress. People have indigestion or ulcers, body aches. Higher blood pressure can be common. Officers complaining of or feeling more physical ailments than normal need to heed their bodies, which are shouting out that they have problems. And it can be just burnout. At an emotional level, people become depressed and despair of continuing to try. They're often lethargic, apathetic, and tired. They become anxious and irritable. Their very demeanor is a bright, flashing sign showing there are problems within. If you see these symptoms in yourself or an officer, you might be seeing the effects of job burnout. That the blue code of silence does not apply. What am I talking about? Officers will cover each other. This is a codependency kind of a thing. They don't want to rat somebody out who's having a problem. They want to just help them get through it and get by it and get it over with, or keep them safe from being looked at askance. That can be a blue code of silence. Well, we're not helping somebody who's in real trouble if we pretend they don't have a problem. Officers suffering burnout often don't see the temporary nature of their feelings, nor their need for support while they're going through it. So we can be proactive to help a friend, not just reactive in bemoaning the loss of a good officer after the fact. Contact support services such as a chaplain, psychologist, or peer support group. We do have a peer support group in the Chico Police. It's made up of police officers who are a special group together and understand how to talk with somebody in complete privacy, in a safe environment, and help them through the situation. So understand that. You can learn more about that peer support from those who are involved in it. We can offer an understanding ear. The chaplains are in the car to hear them out. You don't want to just sit by and watch a career tiredly soak away. So prevent burnout. Maintaining physical health and exercise is the most obvious and concrete way to prevent burnout. As a person begins to despair, she usually stops exercising and taking care of herself. She skips meals and eats junk from fast food establishments. She sleeps less, and a downward spiral begins. If you are burnt out, start sleeping more, eating good foods, and getting some physical exercise. Don't work longer, work smarter. Set realistic goals. Do what you can do. You're only responsible for what you can do. And then when you leave the job, leave the job at work and go home. Become a normal human being. Enjoy friends and family. Have as many friends outside of law enforcement as within law enforcement. Talk to your loved ones about what you do. Don't protect them. You need to share it. You're a person first. Guide your children to adulthood, not an officer laying down the law. Cops will come home and not want to tell their wives what they've just been through because they don't want to distress them. And in a lot of ways, that's okay. That's what you need to do. But you need somebody safe to be able to download it with, because sharing it out loud cuts the stress in half, and it's very helpful. You want to have people to talk to away from work. Talking with someone who is sympathetic helps sort out your feelings. You want to avoid people who continually gripe at you about their situation. They feed the despair in you. This is why choir practice never really helped officers out of burnout. You know what choir practice means? It means going out drinking with the boys. Okay. Burnout results when a dedicated person doesn't receive the rewards and recognition that she expects for a job well done. Read the Bible. It's got lots of stories about this, and it's good to do. Ultimately, you work, I can't see around our thing. You work for the Lord, and you'll be judged by the Lord. If your supervisor overlooks your dedicated work, you can be sure that your Lord will remember. Eternal rewards are better than immediate ones, as a brick of gold bullion is better than a copper penny. Keep your spiritual perspective. After all, you are an important part of a much larger war of good against evil, in which crime forms but a single campaign. Chaplain burnout. This is about us. Okay. Chaplains can get burnout too. In a life filled with multiple responsibilities, a minister can overtax his or her life with stressors that eventually take their toll. Even a chaplain can become burnt out and need to take some serious time away from some aspects of his or her life that causes stress. We owe it to one another to keep a watch on each other and maintain healthy psychological health as well as spiritual health. Being spiritual people helps greatly, for our sense of futility, hopelessness, or despair is reduced by our faith. But we're not immune. We need to help each other. We need to watch each other and be able to provide a good and safe place to debrief. Studies demonstrate that spiritual well-being helps persons moderate the feeling associated with trauma and critical incidents, the anxiety, the hopelessness, and the isolation. Many officers and patients expect chaplains to help them with their distressing feelings, and so we've got to provide that. For a lower burnout rate, chaplains help officers, firefighters, healthcare workers cope with personal problems. We can enhance morale and decrease the burnout rate by just being there and talking through their lives. In one study, 73% of ICU physicians and nurses believe providing comfort for staff is an important chaplain role. 32% believe chaplains should be available to help their staff with personal problems. So it's good to know that. A powerful reminder: when religious beliefs and practices are tightly interwoven with cultural contexts, chaplains constitute a powerful reminder of the healing, sustaining, guiding, and reconciling power of religious faith. When we go out in the public, and present ourselves along with uniformed police in this gray shirt. And they say, well, what are you? I'm a police chaplain. The police have chaplains. They don't know it. It's not something that's publicly advertised. But when we show up in a tragic situation and we're there as part of the police force, as chaplains, it surprises the heck out of everybody. And they're blessed by that. And they think, this is wonderful. Wow, I didn't realize that cops care so much about the public. Well, yeah, they do. And they provide us for you to bring you into this situation. Okay, that's burnout. Does anybody have anything to add or a question to ask about it? Okay, that's the case. Let's move along. All right. Okay, back again, everybody. So no questions. We'll go on to our last and final thing about the stresses. Okay, let's go there. All right, our final one, stress management. I hope we can have some fun with this because it's a lot of depressing subjects, but there it is. There are red flags of emotional exhaustion that can happen. This is kind of related to burnout too, but stress in general. How can you tell when your energy level is slipping to dangerous levels? What signals emotional and physical exhaustion? So let's answer the questions asked as you consider the last 2 or 3 weeks of your life. That would be everything since Christmas, right? Give yourself a score of each. 2 if your answer is often, 1 if it's sometimes, 0 if it is rarely. Get a total, and you don't have to keep score of this, but just think about it, what your answers are, how frequently you feel yourself there. 1, are you spending an unusual amount of time by yourself, withdrawing from friends, family, and work acquaintances? 2, are you becoming more negative, pessimistic, critical, or cynical about yourself and others? 3, are you forgetting appointments, deadlines, or activities and not feeling concerned about it? 4, are you more irritable, hostile, aggressive, angry, or frustrated than usual? 5, are you sleeping either much more than usual or significantly less? 6, do you suffer from gastrointestinal problems such as indigestion, stomach discomfort, diarrhea, or colitis? Ew. 7, are you waking up feeling tired or fatigued? 8, are you spending a lot of time thinking or worrying about work, people, future, or past? 9, do you have an overwhelming feeling of being overloaded, that too many demands are being imposed on you? I'll raise my hand for that one. 10, do you find yourself focusing on relatively petty things or persevering with non-productive or ineffective actions? 11, do you feel that nothing you do is effective in coping with your life, or that you're helpless to control the outcome of anything? 12, are you experiencing headaches, muscle tensions, or stiffness in your shoulders or back or neck, or increased pain anywhere in your body? Ouch. 13, does your heart thump or race, or do you get irregular heartbeats when you lie down to rest? That wouldn't be good. 14, do you get dizzy or lightheaded, especially when you're under pressure? 15, have you become aware of increased anxiety, worry, fidgeting, and restlessness? If you did your little scoring exercise, you might total all those. The 15 items cover the most significant signs of overwork: weariness, withdrawal, negative thinking, forgetfulness, irritability, stomach discomfort, and headaches and lightheadedness. The simple test will not yield a conclusive result, but you can tentatively interpret your score as follows. If you were 1 to 5 points, you're living in paradise, relatively stress-free, and appear to be coping well with your pressures. From 6 to 10, you're showing mild signs of distress from overwork, so you should ease up a little bit. From 11 to 16, you're showing moderate signs of distress from overwork. You've got to ease up a lot. 17 to 24, you're showing severe signs of distress from overwork and need to change your style drastically. You may need to seek help from a professional if necessary. 25 to 30, you're living dangerously. You're experiencing distress in every major system, and you need to consult a physician right away. Then get some good stress management counseling. Okay, that's a fun test. How does stress affect us? 1, alarm. This first stage is the mobilization of the body's defenses. Messages from the nervous system reach the hypothalamus gland that notifies the pituitary gland and adrenal glands. The pituitary and adrenal system pumps hormones into the bloodstream. These hormones have the effect of speeding the heart up, increasing respiration, and stopping digestive activity. The body gets ready for a fight or a flight, or scared or worried about something that's an immediate threat. In animals or primitive man, this alarm system triggers physical action like flight, running away like fight or flight. This tension is released. There is neither fight nor flight in our normal lifestyle, so there's no release for all the preparedness that ends up coming up with such alert. Such a situation can lead to ulcers or headaches or backaches, palpitations of the heart, rashes, and various other ailments. There are 2 other reactions to conflict, I should say. It says, looks like Carla lost it. People will talk about fight or flight like those are the only 2 options. There's also feign and fawn. All of them are F's. To feign is to act dead, to go into inaction and say, I'm not a threat.
Blair Schultz.
I'm going to have to put that on message and I'm going to have to get back to him. Okay, sorry about that. To feign is to act dead, to go to sleep or to get real still, look like wallpaper. I'm not really here, or if I'm here, I'm not a feature of anything. And fawn is to go to the person who you feel is a threat and say, I'm a nice guy, be nice to me. I'm not a threat, I'm a good guy. I'm on your team, don't be mean to me. Okay. Resistance and adaptation is number 2. In this stage, the invader is fought off or an adjustment is made somehow. If you become tired, you sleep. If hungry, one eats. This defense system works so well that most of the time, we're not even aware of it. We are all bombarded by hostile forces, but we're not all sick from it. It is only when defense systems have broken down that the illness is a result. 3, exhaustion. A body cannot be under stress all the time. Release has got to occur. Illness can be the result of stress. The interaction of a hostile condition with stress could be the cause of colds, allergies, asthma, headaches, ulcers, colitis, heart disease, arthritis, and other illnesses. I hope you're all feeling okay. This is not meant to make you feel sick. Now, how do we avoid stress? That's what we're kind of aiming toward here. Here's a bunch of kind of admonitions to do things better, suggestions for making your life less stressful. Get up 15 minutes earlier. Prepare for morning the night before. Never wear ill-fitting clothes. And here's from Chaplain Hansen, get good socks. Why do I say that? I'll be amazed at people who buy a $150 pair of shoes and wear a $2 pair of socks underneath them because it's tube socks and you can kind of roll them around and make the heel any place you want to. Well, that's bad for your feet. And you can pay $5 for a pair of socks that feel really good and are engineered for you. Now your $150 shoes feel like they ought to. Set your appointments well ahead so you know where you're going and what you got to do. Don't rely on your memory. All of us must keep little journals or things that tell us what we have scheduled. Practice preventative maintenance. 7, make duplicates of all keys. That's good admonition so we don't have the one set of keys lost all the time. Rearrange your work hours if needed. Say no more often. Shop online or by phone. We're all shopping online by Amazon these days. Rearrange your meal times if you needed so that you have meals properly. Feed the children separately, possibly. I think feeding children along with adults is a very important part of family life. So I'm not sure I like that admonition. Keep emergency supplies. Walk everywhere you can. Make copies of important papers and keep a good filing system. Don't put up with anything that doesn't work properly. Get it fixed. 17, make advance reservations. 18, allow extra time. I would say that's a good thing for anybody who is always late, running late. Set your time to say, I'm going to get there 10 minutes earlier. Now, if you don't get there 10 minutes earlier, you're still going to get there on time. Be prepared to wait. Find the humor in whatever you're doing. Relax your standards a little. Perfection is not for this world. And when you can, get help. Establish a serene place of your own that may be only in your mind, but you're permitted to go there and dream a bit and get out of the stressful situation. Change your perspective if you can. Count your blessings. Keep the time fillers by the phone. That may be a daily crossword puzzle, something to be able to divert your mind, use your mind, not just look at stupid stuff, but have it available. Travel light, if possible. I got to travel heavy sometimes. Be prepared for rain. Ask questions. Take advantage of your body rhythms. When you're tired, take a rest. When you're ready to go, get your work done. Make contingency plans. What if something goes sideways? Am I prepared for that? Unclutter your life and avoid reliance on chemical aids. Get in touch. You're isolating, you want to get in touch with people you care about. 35, to take time out to breathe deeply, stretch your muscles, take a nap, meditate. It's great to have a scripture or a song that you sing or something to be able to spend some time in relaxation with God. Find enjoyable ways to exercise. Get the thing off your chest that's bothering you. Find a safe place to do it. Reward yourself after stressful activities. Take leisurely baths or showers. Schedule more fun in your life. Take a break from your children and get them safely placed someplace. Some more common sense for stress management would be to eat 3 meals a day, including breakfast. People who skip meals, I'm not sure if that's good and healthy for us. Avoid over sugared things, salt and fat and white flour. So much of our diet is made out of these things. We need to keep those under control and limit them. Pursue regular programs of physical exercise. Nurture and maintain good friendships so you can talk about your stuff. Get enough sleep, 6 to 8 hours a day. Practice abdominal breathing and relaxation. We all breathe too shallow and sit a lot, so it's good to get activity where we breathe deeply and breathe out those deep places in our lungs. Schedule time and activities that are alone and with others for your mental health. If you smoke, stop. Limit alcohol and caffeine to reasonable amounts. and pace yourself. Identify and accept the emotional needs of yourself, your own emotional needs. Recognize early warnings. Allocate time and energy to allow for stimulation. Take appropriate supplements to strengthen the body. Avoid self-medication, that meaning doing things like substance abuse. Take one thing at a time. Give in once in a while. It's okay to lose an argument and apologize. Talk out your worries. Make yourself available. Learn to accept things that you can't change. Okay, we've all heard there are rating scales of things that are stressors, and it's good to note these things can be pretty heavy. If we set the most stressful thing at 100 arbitrarily, of course there's no real scale, but there's differentials between these things. The death of your partner, your wife, your husband, is 100. A divorce or separation can be around 75 or so. Getting a prison term or a legal problem can be up around 60%. Marriage and children problems and marriage, I don't know, those are the same thing. Why is it like that? I didn't make this slide. Marriage and children problem can be about 50%. The loss of a job, just almost that much. Retirement can be as stressful as the loss of your job because it's the loss of your job. Another rating scale can be, as I say, the death of a spouse at 100, a divorce 73, marital separation, which is a little more peaceful than divorce, 65%, jail term 63, death of a close family member also 63, personal injury or illness 53, marriage trouble, strife can be about half of death of a spouse. You get fired at 47, marital reconciliation 45, retirement 45, change in health of a family member can be about a 44%, pregnancy 40%, sexual difficulties 39, gaining new family members about 39. That's through marriage or birth or whatever. Business readjustment can be a 39%er. Change in financial state, 38% stress. Death of a close friend, 37. Change to a different line of work, 36. Change in the number of arguments with spouse, that's interesting, 35. The mortgage over 80%, this is probably not adjusted to the new, probably 280,000 would be today's overstressor. Foreclosure of a mortgage or a loan would be at least 30%, I'd say, foreclosure. Your wife or husband begins or stops work, 26. To begin or end school, 26. I hate school. I haven't been in school in a long time, but it took me decades after I'd stopped going to school before I stopped getting a kind of a gut check in my stomach in the fall around August when they had back to school sales. And I'd go, like those back to school, and I found myself getting a gut check, and I said, what the heck are you doing, Hanson? You haven't been in school in 30 years. I said, yeah, that's right. I don't have to worry about back to school sales. I'm not in school. Oh yeah. Change in living conditions, 25%. Revision of personal habits, 24%. Trouble with your boss, 23%. Change in working hours or conditions, 20%. Change in residence. So you've moved, it's a peaceful move, but it's still like a 20% stress. Change in school is same. Change in recreation, 19, so you no longer can go to the mountains, can only go to the beach. Change in social activities, same. Mortgage or loan less than 80,000, or as I said, 280,000 today. Change in sleeping habits at 16%. Change in number of family get-togethers, 15. Change in your eating habits. Okay, so hopefully those are kind of suggestive that There are stresses that happen in normal work situations or life situations. You got to just take account for it. And if you add these up and you have a number of them, you may also wish to take the questionnaire and score yourself and see, am I doing okay? If you rate too much stress, what are you going to do about it? If you don't do something about it, it's going to do something to you. All right. We have kind of busted through this thing, and I'm open to questions. That is the end of the ICPC world, and we'll get off of this one and back to you all. All right.
I don't have a question, but a comment.
Yeah.
My husband and I served overseas for 8 years.
Yeah.
And they did some research at the time that we were serving overseas, which was in the 90s, with the job stress thing.
Mhm.
And missionaries can have 3 times the amount of stress. They normally have 3 times the amount of stress as people that are living here in the States, but it's without adverse effects. But they do know that when they go over that, then there are adverse effects. And when they come back to the States, they don't know how to handle it correctly because they've lived in another culture for so long, which I thought was really interesting. But I know that I had problems coming back.
I'm not
So,
surprised. Yeah.
um,
I knew a missionary family that was in Papua New Guinea for a long time, and they were involved with language and trying to get the gospel to the people in a language they understood. And that is, I mean, talk about cultural shock. There is no crossover hardly between
no.
that culture and ours, and how to cope with that situation is amazing. Yeah.
Yeah, but when you come back, if you have become enculturated with the group that you're working with, whoever they are and whatever their culture, when you come back to your own culture, you are as out of it almost as you were when you went over because you've learned how to do it differently.
I wouldn't have anticipated that, but I believe you, and I've observed that actually. Yeah, very, very true. Especially if you go over there with your family and your kids have grown up in this separate culture, they don't have this basis even in their past.
No.
And they come back as different, really different kinds of people.
Yeah.
And they don't know how they fit in. Yeah, it's true. It's a little like I talked about in the first class where you have combat personnel going out in the field and they're killing people as part of their job, and they're told you're good, you know, you did that right. We need to do that. Then throw them back into American society. It used to be, this is one of the things that Grossman talked about. It used to be normal that warfare would take place during the daytime. Gentlemen rules. You only did it when the sun was up, and at the evening you went back to your camps, got a little drunk, ate some food, talked about what went on, and then go to sleep, and then get up in the morning, get ready, put your battle stuff back on, go out and fight again. It was actually psychologically more healthful than 24 hours a day being under threat of being killed all the time.
Yeah.
And more modern warfare has a 24-hour likelihood of being attacked. And they observe this even so much in the world wars of the past century, that people in constant combat are psychological victims. By the end of 60 days, they can't tie their shoes. They can't make the decision to get up and walk in a particular direction. 98% of all human beings in that situation will be dysfunctional by the end of that time. They used to call it shell shock, but it wasn't from being bombarded. It just was the complete loss of your psychological ability to cope because you're always in danger and you can't get away. So they learned to cycle these soldiers on and off the battlefield to get them healthy again to go back in if they could manage it. And shell shock was a real thing, but it was really just complete burnout and breakdown. But when you're thrown into those situations where it's normal to be killing people and you're always being shot at. It used to be even in World War II, you get on a troop ship, and it would take a couple of weeks to get back home, during which time you had some sort of cooling off period and debriefing, and you could get kind of normalized back into life. But in Vietnam, they put them on a C-5 and flew them back in 24 hours, and opened it up the door and dumped them out in the world and said, here you go. And they didn't realize that the coping was not there. They weren't ready to just go back into normal life. Normal life is what? Yeah, it's amazing the extremes that we put some people through, and police are in extremes. They're out on the road and they're acting, like everything's normal, and they're feeling this is my normal job. But at any second, they can be called into a violent situation, and they have to go into it. They have to head toward the sound of the guns. And where sirens are going on, they go over there. And they're a little bit charged up. They're adrenaline junkies. And they like action and getting involved in it. But it takes a toll. And then going back to normal life, going back home and trying to deal with the things of the family, which now seem trivial and trite, and you're crying about that. Man, you wouldn't believe this family I saw today, and you're getting on me about this. Yeah, it's a tough dichotomy that plays off each other, and we just got to be aware of it. You'll see a lot of stuff when you get out in the field with the cops that will be a little brain check, and go, okay. These stress things, as I said, I'm not expecting this to be put into effect too much with us, because we're not on duty and in situations that much. The call outs where we go out to somebody's died, or we're going out to make a death notification, are themselves stressful because of the people put into stress situations. But we understand the place is peaceful and the cops are there and it's under control. So we're not coming into an active trouble place. But if we're on a ride along, as we're going to talk about next Tuesday, we might be in an active crime scene that's just suddenly developed, and we're involved in it because we're there with an officer. And we got to know how to comport ourselves and to see what's going on. And that can be really exciting and heady wine, but you watch yourself and make sure you're only in as deep as you can handle. So, yeah. Did you have any questions, Carla? You're not audio yet. Unmute. Oh well. Getting a lot of views of the inside of your hand. That's well, that's all right. If you don't have anything to say, that's okay. But we have one more of these visits. That's next Tuesday morning, again at 9:30. We're finished a little early today, but that's okay. And I bless you all. Let me pray a blessing. Dear Lord God, we ask you to oversee these potential new chaplains in their pursuit of this additional duty in their careers. May we all serve you well and serve the very fine people of law enforcement as they deserve. May we serve the public through the police department that does care about members of the public involved in high stress and difficult situations. May we employ these awarenesses we've learned today in our pursuit of this occupation. May we do that which is always bringing glory and honor back to you, which we pray through Christ Jesus our Lord. Amen. All right, bless you all. Have a wonderful weekend, and I'll see you Tuesday morning, and we'll finish this out. All right.